are so many people out there who want to volunteer and find a way in which they can help.
We've got some brilliant people that have come out of the school system here in Attleboro.
You actually perform as an elected official the way people should.
There are no agendas. Nobody has any projects that they have to complete, but we're just sharing information.
Welcome to this week's episode of People It's Good to Know. I'm your host, John Davis, and today we're very fortunate to have with us Steve Semple, the chairman of the Attleboro Republican Party. Steve, thanks so much for joining us here today.
Well, it's a real pleasure to be here, John. Thanks for inviting me.
Now, you and I met a couple of years ago, standing out holding signs at an election day. I don't remember exactly which election day it was, and I was really intrigued at your interest in developing business in the community and strengthening our community all around. And ever since then, I've kind of looked forward to being able to get you to be a guest on my show. Could you share with us maybe just a little bit about your background? So people out there who may not have met you want to know who you are, where you came from, and
Absolutely. So I was born and raised in Attleboro in a blue-collar Democrat family in a blue-collar Democrat neighborhood, and went to Attleboro Public Schools, on to UMass Amherst, pretty typical story.
Traditional.
Right? And majored in journalism and English. So after college, spent some time in the newspaper business, and that's where I learned a lot about local governments, how they work, how the sausage is made behind the curtain, and that sort of sparked a lifelong interest in the workings of government, both local level, state level, and even on a federal level.
yeah, now you've had the opportunity to be involved in a number of campaigns as a volunteer and coordinator of different political campaigns. That's got to be an interesting experience to work, both locally, but also on like federal campaigns.
Right. Right. So I've worked on local, state, and federal campaigns. I was fortunate enough in 2022 to get involved in the Trump campaign and worked with them through 2023 and into the election year, and it was a very worthwhile experience. So I got to work side by side with former Sheriff Tom Hodgson, and we had put together a very large statewide team to support Trump, and had a lot of success.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, the sheriff was an old, long-time friend of mine from way back in the days when he first became sheriff.
Great guy.
Yeah, him and I may not see eye to eye politically on everything, but certainly a decent guy. Have you ever thought about actually getting involved as a candidate for public office? Is that something that's ever...
Has never been an interest for me. So I like to work behind the scenes. I like to support candidates, provide some consulting, provide some direction, especially to new candidates at the local level. I'm involved somewhat with Mass GOP, and I was fortunate enough when I was on the Trump campaign as one of the vice chairs, to be able to go as an alternate delegate to the national convention in Milwaukee, and was there the day that Trump showed up 2 days after being shot in Pennsylvania, and he walked into the auditorium and blew everyone away.
That had to have been quite an experience.
It was very interesting. I'll never forget it.
Yeah. I think a lot of people who get involved in politics never know really what they might end up getting involved with down the road. What opportunities might come along. Like I've seen a lot of guys who 30 years ago were holding signs with me on the side of the street. Now you see them on the weekend news channels as expert consultants. And I said to myself, that was just some kid who was holding a sign with me. Of course, now those kids have gray hair.
That's how it works sometimes. And you'd get a great education working at the local level. You meet a lot of people, you understand motivations, you understand strategies for running local races, and that's one of the things that I try to help local candidates do. So we've got some brand new candidates on the Republican side in local elections this year. And of course, they're nonpartisan elections, but these are people who want to throw their hat in the ring, run for office, and they need some help. They need to talk to people who have experience, understand what to do, what not to do, how to spend their time, how to spend their money, who it's important to talk to, and who you might be wasting your time talking to some folks.
Right.
So we can help with all of that.
And I think that's great. I mean, you and I are, at the moment, at least, on opposite sides of the political spectrum. I used to be a Republican, but for the last 20 years, I've been a Democrat. But I think it's great to get people involved, no matter what their perspective or political view is, because if we're a democracy, right, we essentially represent all the people.
Right.
Now, you referenced how city elections are nonpartisan. I've noticed over the 30-plus years I've been involved that is, even though it's technically the case, it feels to me like elections are becoming more partisan. People more heavily identify as to what group they belong to. How have you seen that, and how do you feel about the whole nonpartisan election idea?
Well, with the country as divided as it is right now, unfortunately, it becomes easier and easier to identify which side people might be on. I think it would be useful in a local election to be able to see, is there a D next to this person's name, an R, or a U? Because Massachusetts is different than a lot of states where we have such a large proportion of unenrolled, unaffiliated, or like we used to call them, independents in Massachusetts. It's between 65 and 70%.
And that is almost unique nationwide, right?
Yes.
I'm not certain, but we may be the state with the highest percentage of unenrolled.
I think we are. And, we've got probably what it breaks down in Massachusetts. So there's 5 million registered voters, give or take. And about 10% of those are Republicans, 20% Democrats, and leaves 30% independents. And there are a few cats and dogs parties. Libertarians will show up at maybe 2% or whatever. But for the major parties, that's a small percentage of people who identify as either Democrat or Republican.
Right.
And the trick is to go find that huge slice of the pie that represents the unenrolled folks and find out who you can get to support your program out of that group.
Right.
And it really shows that most of your neighbors, your friends and neighbors, aren't on one side or the other, don't identify that way. And it makes it a little bit harder to figure out who you should go after out of that independent block.
I mean, Massachusetts actually is a really, again, unique state. In the time I've been involved in politics, even though we are thought of as a democratic state for the most part, I believe 5 of the 7 governors we've had in that time have been Republicans.
Interesting, isn't it?
It is.
Let's hope we have that situation again real soon.
Let's hope we have a great debate about that in the coming year. But I think it's important to realize that my view on it is that the public is looking for the candidates who they think are most interested in helping the middle class, working class, regular family, like you and I were growing up. And I think there's a shift back and forth as to which party they view as being that at the moment.
People get upset when I refer to them as normal people. Right? It's the average person, the average working person who wants to get a job, work hard, buy some property, maybe get married and have a family, and live a good life, right? And generally be left alone by government, not be told what to do every time they turn around.
Right. Yep. Yeah, and I think you make an interesting point there about let's call it the role of government, and whether more government is better government. And I think there's a divided view between the two parties there. I think most Republicans probably feel that less government provides people the better opportunity.
Right.
And a lot of Democrats seem to think that more government, maybe better government, no matter what. At the local level, I was always intrigued. Again, I served a number of years as a city councilman. And during my time on the council, it almost seemed to me like my Republican friends, myself included, were the ones creating most of the rules, which seemed to be a complete contrast to that ideological belief.
That's an interesting experience.
It was a peculiar observation I made over the years. Which again leads me to believe that, I tend to believe that local government is the government that has the most influence and impact directly on people, in that the more we recognize how much we have in common, the better off everyone is. That, divisiveness doesn't make anything stronger. Other than, it might make a few political consultants richer, but it doesn't really make your community stronger.
Right. And I find, John, that as chairman of the Republican City Committee, that I get asked a lot, well, what are Republicans? What do you stand for? What's this all about? Because they have in their minds pictures of Richard Nixon, maybe Ronald Reagan, maybe some others. And what I explain to them is that what we value is freedom, peace, and prosperity above all. And then when you get down into the weeds a little bit more, we look for generally lower taxes, less government, and more local control, to your point, right? That's where the rubber really meets the road, is what are you able to do at a local level where you can actually influence things more, because you know your local officials, you know the lay of the land in your community, and you can get people, or help to get people elected who support your point of view at a local level.
Yeah. It is amazing the influence and impact that you can have at a relatively local level. And in a reasonably small state like Massachusetts, even at the state level. I remember as a young businessman, I'd only been involved in politics for a couple of years, but I would have people like Congressman Blute, or on a couple of occasions, both Governors Weld and Cellucci, reach out to me to ask me my opinion on things. And I'm thinking to myself, I'm just some young guy, You might not have that same impact in a bigger state like Texas or California, but in Massachusetts, you really can be heard if you want to get involved.
Well, Massachusetts is also unique in that most of the states in the country are run by county governments. So elections are run at the county level. In Massachusetts, elections are run at the city and town level. So 351 separate cities and towns, all running their own elections. And so for somebody, a politician at a state level, when they want to get the pulse of people in the state, they go right to the communities. So in Attleboro, in our Republican City Committee, we have had over the past 3 months visits by the two announced candidates for governor, Mike Keneally and Brian Shortsleeve, both came and addressed our committee. And before that, it was Kelly Dooner, state senator from Taunton, who I just love to death. She's a role model for a young person, a young woman coming up into politics and having an impact, hard worker, and just an awesome person, and a dog lover, which means a lot.
There's an interesting point. Today, right, there are a lot of women involved in politics. First campaign I ever worked on was as a kid in 1978, I think it was, holding signs for Margaret Heckler when she was our congresswoman, when there were hardly any women in Congress.
Right.
You think, just in our lifetime, how much that has changed.
Right. Well, then came along Betty Poirier, right? A big fixture. And Judy Robbins in Attleboro. So that's a great thing, and I think has a lot to do with more women just being involved in professional life. More women going to college than ever before. More women in roles like doctors or other professions, and they want to be politicians. I think it's great.
Right. And I don't view politician as a bad word. Some people may take the label of being a politician as somehow derogatory, but I view political people as people who want to have an impact on their community. And in almost all cases, they want to have a positive impact. Some of them may or may not. But I think most people who get involved in running for office are well-intentioned.
Yes.
I'm sure, right? That's been your experience.
Especially local office. I mean, it gets a little sketchy the further up the food chain you go, right? But in local office, there are people that want to do good things and give back to their community. And that's, you and I have talked about this before, where I think of people who may be Democrats, in local government, and I look at them and I say, no, they're our neighbors. They're people we go to church with. Our kids go to school together. They're on sports teams together.
Right.
It's not them versus us. It's just that we're trying to do the same thing. We just have a little bit different perspective.
Right. I mean, I've always said, I respect anyone who's trying to do the right thing for the community. We may have different points of view as to what the steps are to make that happen, but that's just life, right? And I think people would be shocked at how much Democrats and Republicans in general have in common.
Absolutely.
We highlight the 10% of stuff that we oftentimes starkly disagree on. But those things are the things that people have disagreed on for 1,000 years and probably will for another 1,000. Because I listen to a lot of, I've got a pretty diverse group of friends on both ends of the political spectrum. And I almost hear the same things word for word being said by each of them.
Right.
And it's so funny.
One of the things, John, that I developed a couple of years ago to that point is a little thought exercise, and it's called 20 Questions for Common Cause. And what I do is I'll approach somebody in a very non-confrontational, friendly manner. Like you and I could sit down and I'd say, hey, I'd like to run through some of these 20 questions and just see where you come down. And I'll tell you where I come down. And these are not gotcha questions.
Right.
There's no right or wrong answer. But what happens is at the end of 20 questions, the result is I'll say, look, we agree completely on 18 of these 20 issues.
Right.
And 2 of them we're kind of wishy-washy on, and there were none that were like this, right? And I say, see how much we have in common?
Right.
And
that's a great starting point to get things done.
Exactly. And it's a lot of times I get an interesting reaction from the people that I do it with, who come in and they say, no, I'm a dyed-in-the-wool liberal, I'm a progressive liberal, and you can't change my mind. I say, well, let's just see where we land on these issues. Right. And I've done it multiple times. It's always interesting and always beneficial.
Oh, absolutely. And in this day and age, what I find is people using these terms, liberal and conservative and progressive, and but so often they define them differently.
Right.
5 different people all defining progressive in a different way. And I just find that peculiar sometimes.
One of the things we emphasize in the Republican City Committee is, or that I emphasize, is that we're not radicals, right? We have a particular point of view, and but we want to do what's right and do what's right for the most people. So not taking a radical point of view, and I think most Democrats are like that too. They're not radicals. Unfortunately, there are radical fringes to both parties, and that's what people identify you as. Right.
And that's what you and I can both agree on, is that it really has become a case of the tail wagging the dog. 5% of the people in each of our parties getting 95% of the publicity and causing 95% of the problems, to be honest. Which may not be politically correct to say, but we both know that it's the reality, and so do all the others.
John, they make very sexy headlines, as opposed to folks like us, which are moderates and just marching along, and the headlines are not that sexy.
Right. Yeah. I mean, because working hard every day just to improve the quality of life for people in your community doesn't grab you any headlines.
Right.
And it's kind of a shame that we've evolved to that. But I think shows like today that allow people out there, the opportunity to see someone like yourself, who, as the chair of the party, a lot of people might just assume that, you're a very extreme, whatever they want to label. But I think if people get to know you, they'd realize, nah, he's probably no different than their brother or their father. And as I started off saying, the thing that intrigued me when we spoke at the poll that day was about your serious interest in just making our economic environment in our community stronger.
Right.
That helps all of us.
Exactly.
It's something that I think gets lost. I mean, in the years I served on the city council, what people forget is they'll talk about all the differences and all the arguments, but if you actually look at the record, probably 90% of all the votes that were taken during those years were unanimous, 11-0.
Right.
People glaze over that. what they do is they look at the handful of times every year when there was a 6-5 vote one way or the other. And then they want to attribute people's being on one side or another to some political affiliation,
Right.
which I found that not even to be true either. And like I said, I found a lot of my Republican colleagues were the ones who were the most interested in creating more rules and regulations, and that always bewildered me.
Right. Well, after I got out of journalism, I went into high tech. So I've spent most of my career in business. So mostly large companies. I retired in 2022 from Amazon Web Services. So very large company, working with Jeff Bezos and company. So it was a whole different perspective. And when I look at government, look at it from a business point of view, it's how do we get the results that we want? You know, you line everything up. What do you do first to get to the end result that you want?
Right.
So in a place like Attleboro, if we're trying to make the city more attractive to businesses, get more businesses to come in, increase our tax base, what are all the things we have to do to lead up to that? And one of the things we have to do, which I'm hoping we can do this year, is to talk to the business owners, the business leaders who are in the city now, and say, what's working for you and what's not working? You know, if we had to make 3 changes,
What would they be?
what would they be?
Yeah.
And hear from them. And let them tell us, and not us go in and think that we know everything, right? And try to make something happen.
And I think that's the $1 million question is, you know, what actual action steps could government make that you think would make the business environment stronger?
Right.
You know, yesterday I was very busy. I was all over the place. I went to about, I don't know, 15 or 16 different communities yesterday. In each one, distinctly a little different. But almost all of them, in some way or another, had a thriving business community of some kind.
Right.
They're all, again, a little different. They all have a different, like, key business that community revolves around, more or less. You know, we've been struggling literally since the 80s trying to redefine what Attleboro is going to be. And we're not the jewelry capital of the world anymore. And I think we've yet to really figure out what it is we want to be. And it's pretty hard to move in a certain direction if you haven't even defined what the goal, the end goal is.
Correct. You're right. I couldn't tell you what the vision is for the city right now. We seem to be building more apartments, market rate apartments. So becoming a bedroom community, we have great access to the MBTA. That's important. But what does it really mean for the city? And you know, I would love to see industry come back to Attleboro. And I would love to see more businesses come in and see our downtown area thrive a little bit more. And I'm not sure how to make that happen, but I know that there are smart people in this city who would have great ideas on how to make that happen. One example might be, and I'm making this up, so I don't want people complaining about this example, but
No, I love that thinking out of the... You know.
if we were to ask business people, what are the top 3 things that you would change to make this a more attractive community for businesses? If they were to say, the permitting process is so difficult here. There are so many steps, we don't know who to go to, it seems like we get stopped at every turn, then that would be an actionable item, right? That we could address and that we could fix. And, you know, are there 10 things out there that we could do? Are there 5, 3? We don't know. But by asking the business community, we could find out and be on a better path. And maybe there are parts of government that are already doing that. Maybe the ARA, the Redevelopment Authority, is doing that. I know that there are other outside groups that are doing that somewhat. But I think we should do more. I think we should make a bigger splash.
No, I agree wholeheartedly. And I mean, that's kind of how I first got involved in local government was, I guess it was probably in '94 when I went over to see Judy Robbins and talk about some of the things as a business person I thought didn't make sense around here. And then my years on the council, I was intrigued how my colleagues could continue to make new fees and new rules and new regulations and act as if there were only positive consequences to that. because I believe that every action you take has both a positive and negative consequence, and that we should, seriously debate almost anything that's being considered. And again, that's the opportunity at the local level. You really can have a serious debate on any issue that comes before the council.
Right.
It's just simply a matter of their will to do so.
And I'm very fiscally conservative, so I consider myself to be a social moderate, social liberal in many cases, but a fiscal conservative. So I get very concerned when I look at even our local government, and it looks like it's the government part of government is trying to grow. In business, you want to constantly be growing, right? You want your business to be bigger, more people, more revenue. In government, it might be better to have a smaller government, less revenue, and do better things with the money that you have.
Well, I would agree. I've always thought the key to success in almost any venture is efficiency, right? It isn't that we don't make steel anymore in America. We just don't need as many individuals to create steel. The whole manufacturing process is more efficient. And I say that as a guy who, in my 40s, lost essentially my whole career to my business going to China. Instead of being a multimillionaire, everything I had built up for 25 years is in China. That
story is all
process.
too common,
right.
unfortunately.
I'm not the only guy around here like that. There are hundreds that I've known in my lifetime, and there's thousands throughout, New England.
So it sounds like you might be in favor of the tariffs on China.
No, actually not. And because I say to people, it was free trade, and some of the things that came in during the Clinton administration that resulted in me essentially losing everything to China. But free trade, I think, is essential, really, for a thriving world economy.
Assuming it's fair play.
True.
I think in dealing with the Chinese Communist Party, it might not always be fair play.
Because their goal is win at any cost.
Right.
Right. And again, we can all agree on that. I think people try to pit business people against what we'll call the general community, when in reality, it's the business community that employs those people. It helps them to be able to provide for their families. And this all gets back to what intrigues me about you, the fact that regardless of what party you're involved with, you want to make our community a better and stronger place. Well, we're running quickly out of time here, but you want to share with people a little bit of information about how they could get involved with the Republican Party or any other thing that you're actually involved with?
Sure, I'd be happy to do that. So first of all, our website is AttleboroGOP.com. We have a lot of information there. It's a pretty good website. And we meet monthly. We meet at the library. And we started, actually, when I got involved in the Republican Party in Attleboro, I just wanted to be a member. And I wanted to figure out, who's in charge here, how do I sign up and become a member, and found out that the Republican Party had stopped meeting during the pandemic and just never restarted. So it was dead air. So I went in and decided that I would try to get it going again. And my good friend Howard Bebo, who ran the committee for many, many years, had a good database. He shared with me, and I just started contacting people and said, hey, you want to do this again? And it was 2 years ago, almost to the day today, that we reformed and started the committee with 14 voting members.
Wow.
Right? And now we have 50 members, and we welcome people to come to the meetings, see if it's for them, get on the mailing list, go to the website, and we're happy to have people of all stripes coming to help us in our mission.
That's excellent. Let me just thank you again for being here, and hopefully we can be involved with some debates and forums coming up for this year's city election.
All right, John. Thank you very much. It was great to be here. A lot of fun.
Thank you. And thank all of you for tuning in this week to People It's Good to Know. There are so many people out there who want to volunteer and find a way in which they can help.
We've got some brilliant people that have come out of the school system here in Attleboro.
You actually perform as an elected official the way people should.
There are no agendas. Nobody has any projects that they have to complete, but we're just sharing information